In the vast wilderness of Texas, a lonely young widow faces a future filled with uncertainty, until a chance encounter with a Comanche warrior changes everything. What begins as mistrust soon unfolds into a story that no one could have imagined. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Spring had arrived in the Texas frontier, 1875. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the dusty plains surrounding Willow Creek, a small settlement nestled between rolling hills and a winding river. Eleanor Parker, a 24-year-old widow, stood on the porch of her modest cabin, watching the horizon with tired eyes. Her husband, Thomas, had been gone for 2 years now, taken by a fever that swept through the settlement. She'd managed their small ranch alone since then, with only occasional help from neighbors. Eleanor tucked a strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear and adjusted her simple calico dress before heading to the chicken coop. Her slender hands, once soft, now bore the calluses of hard labor. The solitude had become a weight pressing down on her shoulders each day. "Mornin', Miss Eleanor," called a familiar voice. Sheriff James Miller rode up on his chestnut mare, tipping his hat respectfully. "Thought you might want to know there's word of Comanche movement north of here. Nothing to worry about. They're peaceful these days. But keep your rifle handy, just in case." Eleanor nodded, her expression remaining unchanged. "Thank you, Sheriff, I always do." After he rode off, Eleanor went about her morning chores, feeding the chickens and milking her only cow. The small vegetable garden needed weeding, and the fence on the north side had 3 broken posts. Too much work for one person, but she had no choice. That afternoon, while repairing the fence, Eleanor spotted a lone figure approaching from the distance. She reached for her rifle instinctively but paused as the rider came into view. It was a Comanche man, tall and proud on his painted horse. Unlike the warriors she'd heard tales about, he wore a mix of traditional clothing and items clearly traded from white settlers, a cotton shirt beneath a decorated vest, leggings, and moccasins. Eleanor stood her ground as he approached, her hand resting near her weapon but not drawing it. The rider stopped a respectful distance away. "I seek no trouble," he said in surprisingly good English. "I am Swift Hawk of the Pennateca Band. My people camp 2 days north. What do you want here?" Eleanor asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I hunt for my son. He is 14 summers and must learn to be a hunter." Swift Hawk gestured to the hills beyond her property. "Good deer there. I ask permission to pass through your land." Eleanor studied his face. His dark eyes held no hostility, only a directness that was uncommon in her interactions with townsfolk who often avoided her gaze, pitying the young widow. "The deer are plentiful this spring," she finally said. "You may pass, but keep away from my livestock." Swift Hawk nodded solemnly. "You have my word." He paused, looking around her property. "You tend this land alone? No husband? No family?" "My husband died. It's just me now." The Comanche man's expression shifted slightly. "The white man's way is strange. Among my people, no one is left alone." He reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in soft leather. "Take this. Medicine plants. Make tea for strength when work is hard." Before Eleanor could respond, Swift Hawk turned his horse and rode toward the hills. She watched him go, the leather bundle in her hand, wondering what had possessed her to allow a Comanche onto her land when most settlers would have raised an alarm. Something in his manner had seemed trustworthy, despite everything she'd been taught to fear. That night, Eleanor made tea from the plants. The bitter liquid warmed her, and for the first time in months she slept without waking until dawn. 3 days later, Swift Hawk returned with a young boy who bore a striking resemblance to him. Between them, they carried a dressed deer. "My son." "Running Fox," Swift Hawk introduced. His first hunt was successful. He gestured to the deer. "We share. Too much for us alone." Eleanor hesitated, but then invited them to use her fire pit to cook some of the meat. As the afternoon faded into evening, she found herself sharing a meal with the Comanche father and son. Running Fox was shy but curious. asking questions about her chickens and garden in broken English. "Why no help for you?" Swifthawk asked as they ate. "No family come?" Eleanor stared into the fire. "My parents are dead. I have a sister in Boston, but she has her own life." She paused. "Thomas, my husband, we were going to start a family, but then the fever came." Swifthawk was silent for a moment. "My wife walks with the spirits now, too." 4 winters passed. This simple statement of shared loss formed an unexpected bridge between them. As they departed, Swifthawk promised to return on his next hunting. Triply over the following weeks, Eleanor found herself looking for Swifthawk and his son whenever she worked outside. The settlement gossips would be scandalized if they knew she'd shared meals with Comanche, but she found she cared less and less about their opinions. When Swifthawk did return, nearly a month later, he brought not only Running Fox but also a young Comanche woman introduced as Sparrow Song, his sister's daughter. She carried seeds and showed Eleanor how to plant unfamiliar vegetables that would thrive in the Texas soil. "You need help," Swifthawk said simply. "Sparrow Song will stay. 1 moon cycle. She teaches you. You teach her English words." Eleanor was stunned. "I can't pay." "No pay. Exchange. Good for both." And so began an arrangement that would change Eleanor's life in ways she never imagined, bringing light back to her solitary existence and building an unexpected bridge between 2 worlds. The summer heat descended upon Willow Creek like a heavy blanket. Eleanor wiped sweat from her brow as she and Sparrow Song worked side by side in the expanded garden. The young Comanche woman had proven to be a blessing Eleanor hadn't known. She needed this plant good for stomach pain, Sparrow Song explained, holding up a green leafy specimen. Her English had improved considerably over the past 3 weeks. "My people use for many generations." Eleanor nodded, memorizing its appearance. "And you said the purple flowers can help with headaches?" "Yes, crush leaves mixed with water," Sparrow Song demonstrated with practiced hands. Their days had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. They rose with the sun, tended the animals, worked the garden, and repaired what needed fixing. In the evenings, Eleanor taught Sparrow Song to read from her small collection of books, while the Comanche woman taught Eleanor to weave baskets and prepare healing salves. One afternoon, they heard the sound of approaching horses. Eleanor tensed, recognizing Sheriff Miller's voice along with others from town. "Stay inside," she instructed Sparrow Song, who nodded and retreated into the cabin. Eleanor met the small party in her yard. Sheriff Miller was accompanied by Reverend Williams and Mr. Garrison, the general store owner who served as town council head. "Afternoon, Eleanor," the sheriff said, his expression uncomfortable. "We've had some concerns raised in town." "What concerns would those be?" Eleanor asked, though she already knew. Reverend Williams cleared his throat. "It's been reported that you're harboring Indians on your property. Comanche, specifically." "I wasn't aware hospitality was a crime, Reverend," Eleanor replied evenly. "Now, Miss Parker," Mr. Garrison interjected, "you must understand how this looks. A woman alone consorting with savages. They aren't savages," Eleanor cut in sharply. "Sparrow Song has been helping me with my land. Her uncle and cousin hunt in the hills with permission. They've shown me nothing but respect." The 3 men exchanged glances. "Eleanor," Sheriff Miller said gently, "folks are worried about you. After Thomas passed, you've been out here alone. Some think maybe you're not thinking clearly." Anger flared in Eleanor's chest. "Because I don't share the town's fear of people they've never bothered to know? Sparrow Song knows more about this land and how to live on it than most folks in Willow Creek. She's been a friend when this town offered me nothing but pitying glances." "There's talk of Comanche raids farther west," Mr. Garrison said. "You're putting yourself in danger." "Swifthawk's band has peace with white settlers," Eleanor insisted. "They trade fairly at Fort Richardson. They're trying to live alongside us, not fight us." Reverend Williams stepped forward. "Perhaps you should come stay in town for a while. Mrs. Cooper has a spare room. This is my home," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm not leaving it, and I won't turn away people who have shown me nothing but kindness." The men looked uncomfortable but seemed to recognize her resolve. We can't force. You, Sheriff Miller conceded. But be careful, Eleanor. Not everyone shares your open-mindedness. After they departed, Sparrow's song emerged from the cabin. They want me to go? Eleanor sighed. They're afraid of what they don't understand. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Sparrow's song spoke of her people's struggles, the dwindling buffalo herds, the pressures to abandon their ways and move to reservations, the mistrust they faced from settlers. My uncle believes we must learn to walk in both worlds, she explained. That is why he brings Running Fox to hunt here, why I am here with you. We must understand each other to survive. 2 days later, Swift Hawk arrived with Running Fox. Eleanor told them about the visit from town. Swift Hawk's expression grew serious. Perhaps Sparrow Song should return with us. No, Eleanor said firmly. Unless she wants to go. This is my land, and I decide who stays here. Running Fox, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. Father, tell her about your plan. Swift Hawk shot his son a warning glance, but Eleanor's curiosity was piqued. What plan? After a moment's hesitation, Swift Hawk explained. Winter comes soon. Your cabin needs repair before cold winds. I thought to bring men from my band to help. 3 days' work, strong roof, good walls. Eleanor was touched by the offer. That's very kind, but the town is already suspicious. My people need work, Swift Hawk interrupted. White man's goods cost much. We trade work for things we need. Eleanor considered this. Her cabin indeed needed repairs she couldn't manage alone. What would you want in trade? Flour, coffee, metal tools. He listed practical items. And, he hesitated, teaching for my son, reading, numbers, white man's knowledge he will need. The request surprised her. You want me to teach running? Fox? Swift Hawk nodded. He must know both ways to survive what is coming. That night, after they had gone to make camp in the hills, Eleanor discussed the proposal with Sparrow Song. My uncle sees far, the young woman said. Our old ways are going away, not all at once, but like water wearing down stone. Running Fox must be ready. Eleanor thought about the town's reaction if she agreed to teach a Comanche boy, about the repairs her cabin desperately needed before winter, about the loneliness that had begun to lift since Sparrow Song arrived. Your uncle said something when we first met, Eleanor recalled. He said among your people no one is left alone. I think I'm beginning to understand what he meant. The next morning, when Swift Hawk returned, Eleanor had her answer ready. Accept your offer, she told him. But I want something else in trade too. Swift Hawk raised an eyebrow. What more? Stories, Eleanor said simply. I want to learn about your people, not just plants and weaving, but your history, your beliefs. If Running Fox is to learn my world, I want to understand yours. A rare smile crossed Swift Hawk's usually solemn face. This is good trade. As he rode off to bring back workers, Eleanor felt a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time since Thomas died, she was looking forward to something. The town might not understand, but standing in her yard watching the horizon, Eleanor realized she was no longer simply surviving. She was building something new. Sparrow Song came to stand beside her. My uncle respects you, she said quietly. He says you have a warrior's heart in a gentle body. Eleanor turned to the young woman who had become a friend against all odds. What do you think will happen when the town sees Comanche working on my cabin? Sparrow Song considered this. They will be afraid, then curious. Then maybe they will see what you see. And what do I see? That people are just people. Sparrow Song replied simply. No matter the color of their skin or the language of their prayers. True to his word, Swift Hawk returned 3 days later with 4 Comanche men. They set up a temporary camp at the edge of Eleanor's property and began work on her cabin at first light. The men moved with practiced efficiency, replacing rotted wood, reinforcing the structure, and patching the roof. Eleanor provided meals and observed their work with admiration. One of the men, called Tall Pine, was particularly skilled with carpentry, creating ingenious solutions for the cabin's structural problems using techniques that blended traditional Comanche knowledge with skills clearly learned from white settlers. Worked at fort building, Swifthawk explained. Learned white man's tools. On the second day, as predicted, riders from town appeared. This time, Sheriff Miller was accompanied by several men, including Thomas Henderson, who owned the largest ranch in the area. What in God's name is happening here, Eleanor? Henderson demanded, his hand resting near his pistol as he surveyed the Comanche workers. Eleanor stepped forward, positioning herself between the townsman and the Comanche. These men are helping repair my cabin for winter. They're working for fair trade. Sheriff Miller looked uncomfortable. This isn't wise, Eleanor. You're causing a stir in town. I'm not doing anything wrong, she replied firmly. They're peaceful. They're helping me. Henderson spat on the ground. Peaceful? My cousin lost his scalp to Comanche raiders 10 years back. You're harboring enemies. Swifthawk approached slowly, hands visible. Not all Comanche same. My band make peace long ago. We trade at fort, follow white man's laws. See? They speak. English and everything? Eleanor added. Henderson wasn't convinced. You can dress a wolf in sheep's clothing, but it's still a wolf. The tension in the air was palpable. Eleanor noticed that the Comanche men had positioned themselves strategically, ready for trouble but not provoking it. Sheriff Miller, sensing the potential for conflict, intervened. Mr. Henderson, these particular Comanche have indeed been peaceful. They trade regularly at Fort Richardson, as the lady says. She's a widow living alone, clearly not in her right mind, Henderson pressed. We have a responsibility to… I'm perfectly sound of mind, Eleanor interrupted, anger rising in her voice. And I'll remind you that this is my property. I decide who works here. An unexpected voice joined the conversation. She's right, you know. All eyes turned to Dr. Samuel Wilson, who had ridden up unnoticed during the confrontation. The elderly doctor was one of the most respected men in Willow Creek. Miss Parker is of sound mind and body, the doctor continued. I checked on her not 2 weeks ago, and she's right about this band of Comanche. Chief Swifthawk, isn't it? He nodded toward the Comanche leader. I believe I treated your nephew last winter at the fort. Nasty cough, as I recall. Swifthawk nodded. You have good medicine. Boy is well now. Dr. Wilson turned back to the townsman. I suggest we let Miss Parker manage her own affairs. Unless you're planning to come out here and fix her roof yourselves before the winter storms, the bye. Men shifted uncomfortably. None had offered to help Eleanor in the 2 years since Thomas died. Henderson wasn't ready to concede. What will people say? A white woman living alongside savages. I'll tell you what I say, Dr. Wilson cut in. I say we could learn something from Miss Parker about Christian charity and looking beyond appearances. Wasn't it our Lord who taught us about the Good Samaritan? The mention of the biblical story caused Reverend Williams, who had been silent until now, to clear his throat. The doctor makes a fair point. Perhaps we've been hasty in our judgment. The confrontation ended with grudging acceptance, though. Henderson rode off visibly angry. As the town party departed, Eleanor turned to Dr. Wilson with gratitude. Thank you, doctor. I didn't expect anyone from town to defend me. The old man smiled kindly. I've lived long enough to see that people are just people, Eleanor. And I've treated enough patients of all colors to know that we bleed the same. He glanced at the Comanche workers. Besides, they're doing fine work on your cabin, better than most could do. After the doctor left, work resumed. That evening, Eleanor began running Fox's first lesson in reading and mathematics while Sparrow song cooked with the other Comanche men. The scene was unusual by any standard of the frontier, but to Eleanor, it felt strangely right. As promised, Swifthawk shared stories of his people around the fire that night, tales of the Great Spirit, of how the Comanche became master horsemen, of the plains, of ancient battles and peaceful times. Eleanor listened, captivated, occasionally writing notes in her journal. Why do you write our stories? Swifthawk asked. So I won't forget, Eleanor replied. And maybe someday others will read them and understand your people better. Swift Hawk was quiet for a moment. Good stories should be remembered, but some white men twist our stories, make us monsters in books. I would never do that, Eleanor promised. I'll write them exactly as you tell them. The cabin repairs were completed on the 4th day, ahead of schedule. The structure was now sturdy, with a tight roof, reinforced walls, and even a small addition that would serve as a proper bedroom, giving Eleanor more privacy than she'd had before. As the Comanche men prepared to leave with their traded goods, flour, coffee, tools, and a few books for Running Fox, Eleanor felt a strange sadness. The past days had brought life and energy to her quiet homestead. Swift Hawk approached her as the others packed. "Cabin is good now. We'll stand against winter winds." "Thank you," Eleanor said sincerely. "For everything." He studied her face. "You have been alone too long. Not good for anyone." "I'm getting used to it," she replied, though the words felt hollow even to her. Swift Hawk shook his head. "Human hearts need other hearts, like fire needs air." He paused. "My band moves to winter camp soon. 5 days' ride from here. Safer from bluecoat soldiers." Eleanor nodded, knowing that tensions between the U.S. Army and various native tribes remained high despite peace treaties. "Sparrow Song stay with you through winter?" Swift Hawk asked. The question caught Eleanor off guard. She had assumed the young woman would return with her people. I haven't asked her. Would you allow it? She is woman-grown, makes her own choice." Swift Hawk looked toward his niece, who was speaking with Running Fox. "She learns much from you. Good things for her future." That night, after the men had gone to their camp, Eleanor broached the subject with Sparrow Song. "Your uncle mentioned you might stay for winter. Is that what you want?" Sparrow Song nodded. "If you will have me. Winter in camp is hard. Here, I learn more, help more." "I'd be grateful for your company," Eleanor admitted. "It would be a long winter alone." As they sat by the fire, Eleanor realized how profoundly her life had changed in just a few months. The pain of Thomas's loss hadn't disappeared, but it had become a quiet ache rather than the sharp grief that had defined her days. Now, there, was purpose again? Connection? "Sparrow Song," she said hesitantly. "What do your people think about your uncle spending so much time here?" "About you staying." The young woman considered this. "Some understand, some do not. Old ones worry we forget our ways. Young ones curious about white ways." She paused. "My cousin Running Fox tells others you are different. Not afraid, not hating, and—" "Swift Hawk, why does he trust me?" Sparrow Song smiled slightly. "My uncle sees with clear eyes. He knew from first meeting your heart was good." She hesitated. "Also, he lost wife he loved much. Sees same loss in your eyes." Eleanor was quiet, absorbing this. "Does he would come here because he pities me?" "No," Sparrow Song said firmly. "Comes because he respects you. Comanche respect strength. You are alone but strong. This earns respect." Later, as Eleanor prepared for bed in her newly repaired cabin, she found herself wondering about Swift Hawk. His quiet dignity, his wisdom, the sadness she sometimes glimpsed behind his stoic expression. She wondered what his wife had been, like how he had coped with his loss, whether he had found peace. Outside, an owl called into the night. Eleanor closed her eyes, no longer feeling quite so alone on the Texas frontier. The first snow of winter dusted Willow Creek in early December. Eleanor awoke to a world transformed into crystalline white, the morning light casting a gentle glow across the land. Inside the cabin, the fire Sparrow Song had stoked before dawn created a pocket of warmth against the season's chill. Over the past months, their partnership had evolved into a deep friendship. Eleanor's garden had flourished under Sparrow Song's care, providing ample vegetables they had preserved for winter. The young Comanche woman had become skilled at reading and writing, eagerly devouring the books in Eleanor's small collection. In return, she had taught Eleanor the Comanche language, traditional crafts, and survival skills that made frontier life more manageable. Running Fox visited weekly for his lessons, his quick mind absorbing knowledge with remarkable speed. Occasionally, Swift Hawk accompanied him, bringing news of their band and traded goods from the fort, Each visit left Eleanor with a curious warmth that lingered long after they departed. "Snow comes early this year," Sparrow Song observed as they shared breakfast. "My people would say the winter spirits are hungry," Eleanor smiled. "My father used to say an early winter means a gentle spring to follow." Their peaceful morning was interrupted by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Eleanor went to the window, surprised to see Dr. Wilson riding through the snow, his medical bag secured to his saddle. "Dr. Wilson," she greeted him at the door. "Is everything all right?" The elderly physician dismounted slowly, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Morning, Eleanor. I'm afraid I bring concerning news. There's been trouble at Fort Richardson." Eleanor's heart tightened. What kind of trouble? A skirmish between soldiers and a group of Kiowa. Unfortunately, there were casualties on both sides. He glanced at Sparrow Song, who had come to stand beside Eleanor. "The army is on edge. General Mackenzie has ordered all Indians in the area to report to the fort for identification." "Swift Hawk's band?" Eleanor asked anxiously. "They weren't involved in the fighting," Dr. Wilson assured her. "But the order applies to all natives. I thought you should know, given your connections." Sparrow Song's expression had grown serious. "My people will not go to fort. Army takes those who come, puts on reservation far away." "She's right," Dr. Wilson admitted reluctantly. "I've heard rumors the Army plans to relocate several bands, peaceful or not. The settlement's growing nervous after the skirmish." Eleanor felt a surge of protective anger. "Swift Hawk's people have honored every treaty. They've harmed no one." "I know that," the doctor said gently. "But fear makes poor counsel, and there's plenty of fear to go around right now." After he departed, promising to return with any news, Eleanor and Sparrow Song discussed their options. The young woman was adamant about warning her people. "I must go to winter camp," she insisted. "Tell them of danger." "It's too dangerous for you to travel alone," Eleanor argued. "If you're caught, I know these lands," Sparrow Song countered. "Can travel unseen." Their discussion was interrupted by another arrival, this time Sheriff Miller, looking troubled. "Eleanor," he began without preamble, "have you seen any Comanche in the area recently?" She hesitated, aware of Sparrow Song standing behind her. "Not since before the snow." "Why?" "Army patrols are sweeping the region." "There's been trouble." "Dr. Wilson already told us," Eleanor interrupted. "The Kiowa skirmish," the sheriff nodded. "Henderson and some others are joining the patrols as civilian volunteers. They're in a hanging mood, Eleanor. I'm worried they won't distinguish between peaceful Indians and hostiles." "That's murder, not justice," Eleanor said sharply. Sheriff Miller sighed. "I know. I'm doing what I can to keep things calm, but you should know. Henderson's been asking questions about your Comanche friends. Be careful." After he left, Eleanor made a decision. "We have to warn Swift Hawk ourselves, both of us." Sparrow Song looked surprised. "You would leave your home?" "To prevent bloodshed?" "Yes." Eleanor began gathering supplies. "We'll take my wagon. If anyone stops us, I'll say we're delivering medicines to outlying farms for Dr. Wilson. It's not entirely a lie. We can bring some of your herbal remedies." They departed before noon, following Sparrow Song's directions toward the Comanche winter camp. The journey was slow through the snowy terrain, and they made camp that night in a sheltered ravine. As they sat by their small fire, Eleanor confessed, "I've been thinking about what happens after winter, when your people move with the buffalo herds again." Sparrow Song studied her face in the firelight. "You worry about being alone again." "Yes," Eleanor admitted. "I've grown used to having you there, to running Fox's visits, to—" She hesitated. "To seeing Swift Hawk." A knowing look crossed Sparrow Song's features. "My uncle also speaks of you often." Eleanor felt her cheeks warm, and not from the fire. "Does he?" "He says you have wisdom that matches your strength." Sparrow Song smiled slightly. "This is high. Praise from Comanche man." The next morning they continued their journey. Midday they spotted riders on a distant ridge, military patrols judging by their formation. They diverted their route, taking a longer path through a wooded valley to avoid detection. They reached the Comanche winter camp on the third day. It was nestled in a protected canyon, with hide teepees arranged in a traditional circle. Children were the first to spot them, calling out in alarm at the approach of a white woman's wagon. Swift Hawk emerged from the largest teepee, his expression changing from wariness to recognition. He strode toward them as they halted the wagon. "You bring trouble?" he asked directly, noting their urgent manner. Eleanor quickly explained about the fort, the patrols, and Henderson's search party. Swift Hawk's face remained impassive, but Eleanor had learned to read the subtle changes in his eyes. There was concern there, and calculation. "You risked much to bring warning," he said finally. "My people thank you." The band's elders gathered to discuss the situation. Eleanor was surprised when Swift Hawk invited her to join them, an unprecedented honor for an outsider. Inside the council teepee, she listened as they debated options. Some argued for moving farther west, others for splitting into smaller family groups to avoid detection. "The army will not stop," one elder said gravely. "They want all Comanche on reservations now." "Fighting brings only death," another countered. "We are too few." Swift Hawk finally spoke. "We have kept peace, followed treaties. White government breaks promises, not us." He looked at Eleanor. "What would you do, woman who sees with clear eyes?" All faces turned to her. Eleanor took a deep breath. "I can't tell you what to do. This is your decision. But I can offer my land as sanctuary for women and children while the men negotiate with the fort authorities." Her offer created a stir among the elders. One old woman with deeply lined features spoke rapidly in Comanche. "She asks why you would risk your standing with your own people," Swift Hawk translated. Eleanor met the elder's gaze. "Because it's right. Because your children deserve safety. Because—" She hesitated, then continued honestly. "Because you have become like family to me." That night, a decision was reached. The band would divide. Elderly, children, and most women would go with Eleanor, hidden in her wagon under supplies. Swift Hawk and the other men would approach Fort Richardson openly, under a flag of truce to assert their peaceful status and negotiate. Before dawn, as preparations were made, Swift Hawk pulled Eleanor aside. "If something happens to me," he said quietly, "my son goes to you." Eleanor felt her heart constrict. "Nothing will happen. You'll negotiate successfully." Swift Hawk's expression remained grave. "Promise me. Running Fox needs teacher who understands both worlds." "I promise," she whispered, "but you'll come back for him." Then, surprising her completely, Swift Hawk reached out and took her hand, a gesture crossing cultural boundaries he had never breached before. "Eleanor Parker," he said, using her full name for the first time, "you have heart of Comanche woman in white skin." He hesitated, then added, "When this trouble passes, we must speak of future." The journey back to her homestead was tense but uneventful. Eleanor's wagon, seemingly loaded with farm supplies, concealed 6 Comanche women, 4 elders, and 8 children, including Running Fox. They traveled at night and hid during daylight. Arriving at her property, Eleanor quickly organized shelter. The cabin housed the elders and youngest children, while the others used the barn and root cellar, carefully staying out of sight. For 5 anxious days, they waited for news. Eleanor made trips to town for supplies, gleaning what information she could. The army patrols continued. Henderson's search party had returned empty-handed. No one had seen Swift Hawk's band. On the 6th day, as dusk fell, Eleanor spotted riders approaching, Swift Hawk and 4 other men, all unharmed. The reunion was joyful, with Running Fox running to embrace his father. Later, as the Comanche celebrated around a carefully shielded fire in the barn, Swift Hawk explained what had happened. "Fort commander is reasonable man. Knows my band keeps peace. He give papers, documents saying we are friendly Indians permitted to hunt traditional lands." His expression darkened slightly. "But says soon all must choose. Reservation or become like white man, with houses and farms." "What will you do?" Eleanor asked. Swift Hawk looked at his son, talking animatedly with sparrow song. Old ways are going. Like winter snow in spring sun, cannot stop change. He turned back to Eleanor, but can choose how to meet it. In the weeks that followed, a remarkable transformation occurred. With the Army's official recognition of their peaceful status, Swift Hawk's band established a semi-permanent camp on the far edge of Eleanor's property. They began learning farming alongside their traditional hunting, with Eleanor and Sparrow Song serving as teachers. The town's reaction was initially hostile, but Dr. Wilson and, surprisingly, Reverend Williams advocated for understanding. The Poi minister even visited the Comanche camp, exchanging spiritual perspectives with their elders in a gesture of unprecedented respect. By early spring, as the snow melted and new green touched the landscape, Swift Hawk and Eleanor stood together on the porch of her cabin, watching Running Fox teach younger children to plant corn in the Comanche way. "My wife would have liked you," Swift Hawk said suddenly. "She also had brave heart." Eleanor turned to him, feeling the weight of unspoken possibilities between them. "What happens now, Swift Hawk?" He looked out over the land where their two worlds had begun to merge. "Now we make new path. Not white way, not old Comanche way, new way." He hesitated, then added, "Together if you wish it." Eleanor thought of the lonely years after Thomas, of the fullness that had returned to her life, of the challenges that still lay ahead in this uncertain frontier where cultures collided and transformed. "I wish it," she said simply. Swift Hawk nodded, a rare smile transforming his solemn features. He took her hand, and they stood together as the spring sun warmed the Texas plains, illuminating the new beginning they had found against all odds.